Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. In this series, we're aiming to help business owners, business leaders, and fellow coaches by sharing our experience and the experience of our guests who've coached people all around the world in all of different sectors and industries that you can imagine. So, very little more to say other than please now sit back, relax, and enjoy this edition, and look out for a special offer for our loyal audience at the end of the programme. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. Today, I'm joined by Alex Noble, who's joining us from Sydney, Australia. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me on. I look forward to chatting and exploring the philosophies of, I guess, my mind, and hopefully help one or two people out there listening.
We're going to try and talk today about how you help leaders who are under pressure with accountability and their mental performance. So how did you find yourself in this space now then, Alex? How did your career take you to this point?
Yeah, so it's kind of a very unexpected way that I ended up kind of here, helping, people from all kind of demographics and occupations and ages, from executives to sports teams. So pretty much I had a profound injury happen to me when I was 16, breaking my neck playing rugby. And I guess that was the pivotal moment that kind of changed my course and my future. And I ended up, losing just about everything in my life, but also at the same time, gaining more than I ever thought that I possibly could. And, now in hindsight, 7 years since my injury, achieving more than ever. And so I guess from that moment where I got injured, I, have learned some pretty important lessons along the way of a bit of a traumatic or, extremely difficult and adverse, roller coaster. And yeah, learned some pretty profound lessons and acquired some, insights and utilized some strategies which have been extremely effective for me, not only to get through the difficult life experience that I've gone through, but also to overcome and thrive and, become more than I ever thought that I could become. And so now that I've, learned those lessons, gained this perspective, I guess it kind of brought me onto the pathway of, motivational speaking, podcasts such as this, mindset coaching and performance coaching with, like I said, executives, corporates, sports teams, even a lot of schools. It's a big range, and also led me to writing a book also on mindset. And so, yeah, now I guess my main occupations are, yeah, I'm an author and I am a motivational speaker and kind of like a mindset and performance coach, I guess, depends how you want to phrase it. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I ended up on this pathway.
So when you're working, let's say, in a one-to-one situation in a coaching environment, and you mentioned the mindset coach, what would be the kinds of challenges that the coachee, that the person you're working with would typically be facing?
Yeah, so to be honest, most of my work has been with, either teams ranging from small executive leadership teams of like, 3 to 5 people all the way up to, audiences of 100,000 plus. I've done a few one-on-ones, but mainly, more than, groups, I guess. But the main uh, issues or the main things that we address when I'm talking with, corporate audiences or executives or leadership teams is often to do with the importance of bouncing back when an unexpected difficulty comes your way, whether it's, in your personal life or in your job and in your business when you're pursuing your business goals. Because, no matter how perfect you are, no matter how much you try and avoid difficulties, like you're going to face them at some point in your life, and more likely than not, multiple times in your life. So, yeah, we often talk about or address the topic of, yeah, overcoming challenges, and not only overcoming and getting back to where you were before the challenge, but also utilizing it to bounce off a trampoline and go further than ever, and or further than before at least. So that's the main one. We also talk a lot about um, the power of the mind and maintaining clarity and approaching problems um, with, yeah, rationality, even when, at times you might feel like everything is crumbling down in your life and everything's going against you, and you know you're getting too busy or stuff's going wrong in your own personal life and at work. There's 1,000 things going wrong, and there's all these things to juggle. It can be extraordinarily easy for people to, lose that clarity and, either get upset or get stressed or, whatever it may be. Your clarity gets clouded by all of these emotions that flood your vision, which often lead people to making irrational decisions or incorrect decisions, or, you know, not the best option in a given circumstance. And so we talk about, mental strategies to maintain that clarity and how to approach problems in the most productive and effective way in order to, not let yourself and your decisions be dictated by your environment. So it's big on mastering your own mind and not letting your environment dictate your own actions. No matter what the environment is, no matter how hostile, difficult, traumatic, stressful, whatever it may be, it's about isolating yourself, your emotions, and your ability to choose to respond to situations from those environments.
So when you're working with these teams, are you offering solutions? Are you offering techniques that they can adopt
So
to
it's
face into
usually,
challenges with a more positive outcome?
yeah, so it's usually not the, it's usually not me providing the solution. It's me trying to enable and empower my clients or audiences to find the solution themselves. So the way I phrase it is, my life's purpose and everything that I do really is to extract my mindset and perspective and strategies and lessons that I've used, and provide it to others to equip them with like a toolkit to utilize those strategies, utilize those philosophies and techniques in their own life to better approach their life in any given scenario in order to, you know, ultimately fulfill your life. But also, when you break it down, to address problems at work, to optimize your workload, to optimize your efficiency and productivity, to, you know, maximize your optimism and output, and yeah, all these other things. So it's not me providing the answers, because it's so often, I'm like, well, I started doing this speaking career, I guess, at like 19. And even at 19 up until now, where I'm 23, I'm speaking to people of all ages. I'm speaking to CEOs. I'm speaking to even, people 60 and above. And it's like, you know, how am I going to provide the answers to these people that have had way more life experience than me, and, are running these big multinational companies? Like, I have absolutely no idea how to, or what the solution is for them. But what I can do is try and equip them with the tools to help them, enable them to find a solution, or, yeah, optimize their life, essentially, whether it's personal or at work.
Can you share some of those tools with us now?
Yeah, so I have developed this thing called the Noble Way, and the Noble Way essentially is, you know, like the toolkit I've been referring to, the toolkit of all of those strategies, insights, and perspectives and techniques that I use and have used and continue to use in my life, consolidated into that Noble Way. And it's in a kind of like a flowchart structured step-by-step process to make it more digestible and accessible for others. And I did that because it used to be quite hard to answer that question, especially when it's like I got, 2 minutes to respond to whatever it may be, or just in a conversation or over a message. It's hard to, you know, answer that question and provide all of the lessons I've learned in that short period of time. So I've developed the Noble Way, which consists of 4 stages. So stage one involves, it's all about mastering your mind, um, you know, taking control of your mind, being able to control your judgments and your responses to your situation, and isolating your judgments and your responses from your environment, so you're not governed or dictated by your environment. Instead, you make the isolated, rational choice in any given scenario. And that's, all about mastering your mind, because your mind is the only thing that you truly own. In my life, I realized very suddenly that we never really have control over our body. We're just renting it, because at any given moment it can be taken away from you. But there's one thing that can never be taken away, no matter how hard or challenging or how much suffering you're going through, and that is our mind and our ability to think and choose how we respond to our circumstances. So it's big on capitalizing upon that. And so that's stage one. Stage two is, once you can master your mind, it's then about finding a state of peace and arriving at a state of peace and maintaining that state of optimism and clarity through life's storms and challenges. And so that's all about, various techniques within that to find that state of peace. And one, for example, is gratitude. But importantly, it's not just gratitude that everyone's heard of a million times in their life, Like, everybody knows about gratitude, and, everyone uses it, but only sometimes. And what I've found in my life is that when it is most important, very rarely do people use it. And that is when you're going through those challenges, when, things aren't going your way, when you are stressed and, you've got all these things on your plate and you can't juggle them all. And, then you get injured or sick, or, a family member gets sick. It's those moments where gratitude is actually most important, when you're, when life trying to knock you down. That is when it's most important and most effective to implement gratitude. So it's all about the importance of gratitude throughout difficulties. And so what that does is, then I also provide techniques about how to implement that gratitude within the difficulties. So I'll give you an example of one of the most powerful ways I use it, which always helps me no matter what the scenario is. And that is, when life has knocked you down or you're going through some sort of, difficulty, all you have to do is say, at least I'm not in a worse off situation. And a good way to do that is by picturing yourself in a hypothetical situation where you are worse off. And from that imaginary point of view, where you're worse off than the actual situation you're in, you would then say to yourself, you would do anything just to be where I am in that actual moment. And what it does is it shows you all of the things that you do have and that you're not realizing, and you will only realize until they're gone. So if you picture them gone, then you realize and appreciate, and you're so happy with them there. So for example, when I get up in the morning, right, I can't just hop out of bed, get my work clothes on, and go off to work just like everybody else. Instead, I've got to get up 3 hours before everybody else with a support worker, and it takes 3 hours to get up because it's a long process on the toilet. I need someone to pretty much help me with everything, to go to the toilet, to put a shirt on, everything. And it's a slow and tedious process. It can get quite, challenging at some points. But then as soon as I do get in a moment where I get upset or I get a little bit frustrated or whatever it may be, all I do is I just stop, take a short breath, and picture myself in that bed that morning with no support worker coming. They got in a car crash on the way here, or, I wasn't in Australia where we have access to support workers. And so I picture myself lying there in bed with no one coming. And then in that moment, I would say to myself, man, I would do anything just to have somebody come and help me out of bed and go through this 3 hour process so I can get on with my day and live, And so it's like, I would do anything for that. So that makes having a support worker there to help you get up, a glorious moment and a moment that I would otherwise wish that I had. And that all of a sudden makes me really happy and optimistic and grateful that I have that opportunity and the ability to live. And so all of a sudden I'm gone from, a state of, you know, sadness or frustration to optimism, happiness, and therefore clarity and, then having the clear mind to approach my life and ultimately living a happier life is better than living a sadder life. So that's one example. So that's stage two, the state of peace. Then once we arrive at a state of peace, it's then the third stage, which is becoming resilient. And so the strategies that I talk about within this stage about, the art of becoming resilient, and not just resilient sometimes, but, becoming truly resilient is various things. But one, for example, is the importance of breaking down big tasks and big goals that are large, far away, and often overwhelming into smaller, more manageable tasks that you can approach one by one. And, it seems quite simple when I just say it like that, but in life, it can be a lot harder. And so practicing the ability to break down big tasks into smaller ones is something that I think, yeah, takes practice. But once you develop the ability to do that sufficiently, it's a ultimate game changer. Like for me, when I got injured, I was in the intensive care unit for 9 days after a 4-day surgery, and I was unable to literally do a single thing. I lost all movement from my chin down. The only thing I could move was my eyes. I couldn't even breathe on my own. Had machines doing it for me. I couldn't even drink, eat, swallow, anything like that, right? And so from that point, I knew that what was ahead of me, 9 days in ICU, then another 256 days in hospital, and then every day from then onwards, waking up extra early just to compete with others, being in a wheelchair every hour of my life, sitting with nerve pain all day, every day, the 3-hour tedious processes to get up out of bed, the inability to do so many things, the decreased quality of life, all the gym sessions that I'm going to have to do just to try and regain movement to be able to one day hopefully eat, all these things. If I focused on all of those things in that bed in ICU, I would have been completely defeated and I would have given up right there on the spot. I would have said, no effing way. That's way too hard. There's way too many things I need to do. It's too hard. It's going to take too much, too overwhelming. And as a result, I would have failed and I would not have, got anywhere near where I am today. So instead of focusing on that big, overwhelming, far away goal ahead of me, I avoided that at all costs and I just focused on the one small goal and manageable task that I could achieve, that I did have control over. And so that was in that moment where I didn't have control over much at all because the only thing that I could move was my eyes. So the first goal that I set for myself was to try and see the time on this red digital clock just on the left of me. And so because I couldn't move my head at all, I was just out of range to see the actual time on the clock. But that was the goal I set for myself. And I said, I'm going to, put all my energy and might into seeing the time on that clock. And so, it took me about 2 days, but I finally saw the time on that clock. And then for me, that was a tick. And then as soon as I got that tick, I was straight on to the next small, manageable goal that I could achieve. And so just by doing that, focusing on the smaller goals and capitalizing upon them as much as you possibly can and trying your absolute very best, small goal by small goal, in a year's time, in 7 years' time, you're going to be so surprised about where you can end up and way further than you ever thought that you could when you were looking at the big goal from 7 years back,
Yeah.
And
a
so
1%
that's
improvement every day adds up to a lot in a year, doesn't it? That's
yeah,
the point.
compounding effect, exactly right. And most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I guess that ties in well with that principle we were just talking about. So those three stages, once you finesse those three stages, it then takes you to the fourth stage of the Noble Way. And that stage is the growth and achieve stage. And so that is when, the first three stages enable you to grow and achieve. But then when you get to that fourth stage, the question arises as to whether how much do you want to grow and how much do you want to achieve? Because, you could achieve the goal of getting out of bed for the day and, then watch movies for the rest of the day. Or you can choose to grow and, become so much. But, if the answer to that question is you really want to push yourself to your limits and you want to achieve and accomplish as much as you possibly can in this world, and you want to make the biggest impact that you possibly can and contribute as much as you possibly can, and create the biggest and most impactful legacy on this world that lives long after you're gone, that's when the three subsections of the fourth stage come into play. And so the three subsections or substages of the growth and achieve stage are: one, acceptance. Number two is the importance of embracing discomfort and vulnerability. And the third substage is discipline. And so these three substages are all about maximizing you and your output and maximizing or trying to fulfill potential, essentially. And so acceptance is all about distinguishing between controllable things in your life and uncontrollable things. And with the uncontrollable things in that pot, immediately accept and disregard those at all costs, And often those uncontrollable things are the ones that are the hardest to accept. But if you have identified that you can not control that whatsoever, no matter what you do or say or how much effort you put in, it's going to have no impact or influence on those things, let it go. No matter how hard it is, no matter how much trauma or how much you cared about it, let it go and just focus on the things that you can control. Focus on that pot. And with those controllable things, optimize those as much as you can, capitalize upon them. And so that, I guess, is the art of acceptance. And, that also, again, seems kind of easy when I'm just saying it. But in life, when you're on your own journeys, on your own pathways, and you come across some sort of challenge or difficulty or a traumatic event, or you lose a loved one, or you get injured or whatever it may be, or your business comes crumbling down and you got to sell everything, it is extremely hard to immediately accept that that thing may have gone and just focus on, the things that you can change, because automatically our natural response as human beings is to focus on the grief, focus on the regret, focus on the thing that you wished had. And so it is extremely hard, especially in those, really severe times. And I guess I learned that have many times in my life, countless number of occasions, but I guess the most pivotal one was when I ended up, again, when I got injured and lost everything. I was a, professional rugby player and, trying to make it pro and play for, the top teams. And I was on the pathway there and I committed my whole life to it. Like, I love rugby. It's all I ever did. And, I was a healthy, good looking kid. And then just in a blink of an eye, all of that just shattered and lost forever. And so I understand how people could think it would be so easy to get upset about all those things that I lost. And, I know it would be easy to think about all those things and wish that I had them back and wish I could still run around and wish I could still kick the footy. But I quickly realized that no matter like how much I think about that, it's just going to have no positive effect on me whatsoever. It's only going to have detrimental effects. So as hard as it was, I just accepted the fact that that was all gone immediately and just focused on what I had and what I could control. And so that's just an example. But I think if you can finesse the ability to distinguish between the controllables and uncontrollables, accept the uncontrollables at all costs, and focus and capitalize upon the controllables to your very best ability, then, that is how you're going to enable yourself to fulfill your potential and reach your capabilities. And so the second substage is, the importance of embracing discomfort and vulnerability. And so what this is about is it's about, you know, when you are vulnerable, when you're feeling nervous, when you're out of your comfort zone, when you're, you know, feeling stressed or scared and you're uncertain about what the outcome is going to be and you don't want to do something, 99% of those times, those moments are where you do the most growing. And so it's all about changing our perceptions of and nervousness and stress and fear, changing our perception from that being a bad thing to those things being something that we should look for and search for and want and strive for. Because when you look and search for those feelings and moments, that is how you're going to, grow in whatever endeavor you may be on and be better than you are and accomplish more than you had. So I'll give you another example that when I first started my speaking career, my first ever keynote, I was, what was I, 19 or maybe even 18. I got invited to do like a presentation and it was my first one ever. I hated public speaking. It was to 100,000 people, 106,000 people actually. And so me hating public speaking and my immediate answer was like, no freaking way I'm doing that. Like, I would much prefer to just be in the audience and watch or stay at home and flick on a movie where I'm comfortable. And I knew that if I did accept and I did go out there on stage, I would hate every single moment of it. I would hate the lead up. I wouldn't sleep the night before because I was nervous and I thought about, oh, what if I fail? All these things. And so, although I knew I would feel all those things, I also knew that if I didn't do it, I would then be wondering my whole life about what could I have become? Who could I have helped? Where would I be if I, you know, just embraced the vulnerability, caught the nervousness, and just accepted and said yes. So I said yes, and now, 6 years later, I've spoken to millions of people across Australia and a few international, and written a book and helped all these people and received messages about how I've impacted or changed someone's life. And I wouldn't have had any of those things if I never embraced vulnerability and embraced the discomfort. So yeah, the importance of getting out of your comfort zone in order to thrive. So then the third substage is discipline. And so what I've defined discipline as is I've distinguished it from motivation. I think motivation is, you being motivated to do something when you feel like doing it, when you want to do it, when you like doing that thing. Whereas discipline is no matter how you feel or what you think about it, doing the right thing that you should do anyway. So I see discipline as doing what you should do, not what you want to do. And so that I think is, one of the most key principles that I apply in my life, doing what is best for me, not what my short-term self feels like doing. And as Abraham Lincoln once said about discipline, he says, discipline is deciding between what you want now and what you want most. And I think that he couldn't have put it any better. And I think that if you can go about your life choosing the option of what's going to help you the most in the long term, rather than making your decisions based on what you want at the current present time, then you're bound for success. And that wraps up the Noble Way pretty much.
Alex, that's been fantastic. It's been really great to learn about the Noble Way, to see how you're impacting other people and impacting yourself, obviously, and how sharing these experiences and these outlooks help everybody. If any of the audience want to find out more, how can they find you?
Yeah, so best place is probably my website. It's alexnoble.com.au because I'm based in Australia, alexnoble.com.au. I'm also highly present on social media, especially Instagram. It's I Fight You Fight. That's I Fight FIGHT YOU Fight. And that's also the name of my book, which is now a #1 best-selling book, which I'm very happy to say. So yeah, I would love for you to, reach out, send me a message, even if it's just to, say anything that's you may not think is that important. I would absolutely appreciate that. And I really hope that, some of the tools that I've shared tonight can be of assistance in your own life. We haven't had heaps of time, so, they're all in my book if you want to read that too.
Alex, thanks for your time today. And that's it for this episode. We'll see you again next time. So, there you have it. The latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. Hope you enjoyed it, that you found it useful, and I hope it did what it set out to do. As promised at the beginning of the programme, here is a special offer for you, our loyal audience. If you reach out to me at gwiley@sagewreen.com and mention this podcast, we'll make available to you a coaching programme for you and or your team at a 50% discount. So where can you reach us? So it's definitely gwiley@sagewreen.com. You can also reach us at the Executive Mindset at sagewreen.com, and our website is clearly theexecutivemindset.co.uk. If you enjoyed this, do please leave us with a wonderful rating on Google. We'd really appreciate that. So nothing more for me to say now other than see you again soon.